I can still hear it. The faint whisper that tore my world apart. He's not who you think he is. Those words echoed in my head for days, and even now as I sit here, the sting of them doesn't fade. But back then, in that moment, I had no idea just how much that one whisper would change everything. My entire life, my perception of love, the way I looked at people, the trust I'd built, the walls I had put up, everything shattered in a split second. It was late in the evening when I first heard it. The house was quiet, save for the ticking of the old clock in the hallway. The soft glow of the table lamp flickered beside me as I scrolled aimlessly through my phone. But everything came to a sudden stop when my sister Lily appeared in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes wide with something I couldn't quite place. I set the phone down, my gaze fixed on her. She didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, as if trying to find the words, hesitating, holding something back. I could see the way her hands trembled slightly, fingers brushing against her shirt. It was as if she was afraid of something she knew, something she had to tell me but didn't want to. Finally, she took a deep breath and stepped inside, closing the door behind her with a quiet click. She lowered her voice, so soft that I had to lean in to catch every word. "I need to tell you something. It's about James." My heart skipped a beat at the mention of his name. James, my boyfriend of nearly 3 years. The man I thought I knew better than anyone. I opened my mouth to ask what was going on, but Lily continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's not who you think he is." Those words hung in the air, thick with an unspoken weight, and my breath caught in my throat. What did she mean by that? Was it a joke? Was this some kind of sick prank? I couldn't wrap my head around it. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what Lily was saying, but all I could do was stare at her in disbelief. Lily's eyes flickered to the side, as though she was looking for something, or someone, in the room. Her hands gripped the edge of the chair, and I could see how her knuckles were turning white. "He's not who you think he is, Sarah. I've seen things I can't ignore anymore." I tried to steady myself, my hands pressing into my thighs, trying to keep my calm. "What are you talking about, Lily? What do you mean? What did you see?" Lily shifted uncomfortably, and her voice cracked, as if the weight of the truth she was about to reveal was too much for her. "I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you, but I can't keep quiet any longer. I saw James with someone else, Sarah. I saw him with another woman." My world stopped. I couldn't breathe. The blood drained from my face, leaving a sickly feeling in my stomach. My mind couldn't process the words she just spoke. I had to hear it again. "What do you mean, with another woman? Are you sure?" Lily nodded solemnly, her eyes filled with guilt. "I saw them. Last week. I didn't want to believe it at first, but I followed him. I had to know for sure." My throat went dry. My whole body went cold. Where did you see them?" Lily hesitated, but finally her voice broke. "At the hotel. The one on 5th. He's been seeing her, Sarah. I don't know how long it's been going on, but I know what I saw. They were together, in a room, alone." The words hit me like a freight train. My mind was spinning, a whirlwind of confusion, rage, and betrayal. How could this be happening? How could James, the man I thought was the love of my life, be capable of this? I could feel the tears starting to well up in my eyes, but I blinked them back. I wouldn't let myself cry. Not yet. "I don't believe it," I whispered, shaking my head. "It doesn't make sense. James wouldn't do that. He couldn't. But deep down I knew something wasn't right. There was too much fear in Lily's voice for this to be a lie. Lily's expression softened, and she walked over to me, sitting beside me on the couch. She reached out and took my hand in hers, her grip firm and reassuring, as though she were trying to anchor me to the ground. "I never wanted to hurt you, Sarah. But you need to know the truth. You deserve to know what's really going on." I sat there, completely still, trying to absorb what she was saying. The world around me began to blur and the ticking of the clock seemed louder, as if time itself had stopped. "You have to go to him," Lily continued, her voice filled with urgency. "You have to confront him. You deserve answers." I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. A storm of emotions roared inside me. I had to see him. I had to know if what Lily was saying was true. I had to confront him. But the moment I stepped outside that door, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. The life I thought I had, the love I thought was real, would crumble before my eyes. I stood up, my legs weak beneath me. "I'll go," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I'll go." As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. My reflection was a stranger, my face pale, my eyes wide with fear and disbelief. I looked like someone who had already lost everything. I didn't know it then, but what happened next would change everything. It would tear apart the life I had built with James. It would expose the lies. And it would force me to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. The drive to the hotel felt like an eternity. The streets passed in a blur of streetlights, headlights, and the deafening silence that hung in the air. I couldn't think. My mind was a jumble of conflicting thoughts, rage, confusion, fear, and my heart was beating so loudly that it felt as though it would explode. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, as the city around me faded into the background. The closer I got to the hotel, the heavier the air seemed to grow. Each passing minute felt like a lifetime, and every turn I made felt like I was slipping further into a nightmare I never thought I would face. When I finally pulled into the hotel's parking lot, I sat in the car for a long time staring at the entrance. The glow of the hotel's sign seemed to mock me, its brightness a stark contrast to the dark thoughts swirling in my mind. How could he? How could James, my James, be here with another woman? The doors of the hotel swung open and a couple walked past, laughing and holding hands. It felt like they were mocking me too. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run away. But I couldn't. Not now. I had come this far. I checked my phone for the umpteenth time, wondering if I had missed any messages, any sign that would explain this. But there was nothing. Just the same texts from earlier. Texts where James was the sweet, loving boyfriend, asking how my day was and when I would be home. He had no idea I was on my way to destroy everything he'd built. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car, my legs feeling like lead beneath me. The cold air hit me immediately, but it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except finding him. The hotel lobby was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of perfume and the murmur of hushed voices. I walked toward the elevator, my heart racing with each step, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I had to see this through, no matter the cost. The elevator ride felt like a descent into hell. The metal doors slid shut, sealing me in with my fear and doubt. I pressed the button for the top floor, my hands trembling as I waited. The elevator hummed softly, and I forced myself to focus on my breathing. Slow, steady, just enough to keep from collapsing. When the elevator doors finally opened, I was met with a long corridor, its walls adorned with paintings I didn't notice. The sound of my footsteps echoed down the hallway as I moved toward the room number Lily had given me. 510. I stood outside the door for what felt like an eternity, my hand hovering over the knob. The silence was deafening. For a moment, I questioned everything. Was this the right thing to do? What if Lily was wrong? What if I was about to destroy everything over a misunderstanding? But deep down, I knew. I couldn't walk away. I needed to know the truth. I pushed the door open slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was dimly lit, the faint glow of lamps casting long shadows on the walls. I stepped inside, my eyes scanning the space, searching for him. And then I saw it. There he was, James, sitting on the bed, laughing softly. But it wasn't just his laugh that made my heart stop. It was the woman sitting beside him, her hand resting on his chest. She was leaning into him, her head tilted just enough to show the intimacy in the way they were sitting. For a moment, everything froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. James looked so different in that moment. The man I thought I knew, the one who promised me everything, was now sitting in front of me, with someone else. His arm was around her, his fingers brushing the curve of her neck in a way I'd never seen before. They were so comfortable together, so intimate. It was a betrayal in every sense of the word. My mind was a mess of emotions, anger, hurt, confusion, but above all, I felt numb. My feet finally moved, and I stepped further into the room. The creak of the floorboards beneath me snapped James out of his trance. He turned his head, and his eyes widened in shock when he saw me standing there, frozen in the doorway. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" he stammered, his voice filled with panic. The woman beside him shot me a look of surprise, her lips parted as if she was about to speak. But no words came out. I couldn't take my eyes off of James. I couldn't even get the words out. I was shaking, my body trembling so hard I thought I might collapse. How could you? After everything we had? Who is she? James stood up, his movements quick, as though he were trying to cover up something he couldn't hide. His hands were raised in a defensive gesture. "Sarah, please, just let me explain." "Explain?" I spat, my voice rising. "Explain what? Explain why you're here, in this room with her? Is this the real James, the man you've been hiding from me all this time?" The woman stood up, too, looking uncomfortable. She glanced between me and James, clearly unsure whether to stay or leave. James stepped toward me, but I held up my hand, stopping him in his tracks. "Don't come any closer. I don't want to hear your excuses." He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "You don't get to explain. You've lied to me. All this time, you've been lying to me. Who is she, James?" James looked down at the floor for a moment, and when he looked up again, his face was filled with regret. "Her name is Emily," he said, his voice softer now, almost defeated. "She's someone from my past. I didn't want you to find out this way, but we've been seeing each other for a few months now." The words hit me like a slap to the face. I felt my knees go weak, and I stumbled back, nearly collapsing onto the chair behind me. "A few months? He'd been seeing her while he was still with me? How could he do this to me?" Emily's eyes shifted uncomfortably as she took a step back. "I didn't know about you," she said quietly. I didn't know he was with you." I turned away from both of them, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. I had always believed that James was different, that our love was real. But in this room, everything I thought I knew about him shattered. The silence that followed was suffocating, and in that moment I knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. The room seemed to close in on me, each breath heavier than the last. The shock of hearing James's confession, his admission that he'd been seeing Emily for months, was like a tidal wave, crashing over me in a furious rush. My chest felt tight, as if the air itself had thickened, making it impossible to breathe. I struggled to hold back the tears, but they were fighting their way to the surface, threatening to expose the pain I was trying to hide. I couldn't look at James. I couldn't even stand the sight of him. I had built my entire life around the man I thought he was, the man I loved. But now, standing in front of me, was a stranger, a liar. The world I had trusted was crumbling before my eyes, and all I could do was watch as it fell apart. I turned my back to them, needing a moment to collect myself. I placed my hands on the cold surface of the window, looking out at the city below, but I couldn't see anything. My mind was a whirlwind of disbelief, anger, and heartbreak. How could I have been so blind? How could I have trusted him with everything, my heart, my future, and been so completely betrayed? Behind me, I could hear the shuffle of feet, the soft murmur of voices. James, of course, was trying to explain himself, his voice strained, desperate. But I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear any more of his lies, his excuses, his justifications. "Sarah, please," James's voice cracked, and I could feel his presence behind me. "I never meant to hurt you. I swear, it was a mistake. I thought I could manage both of you." I whipped around to face him, fury boiling inside me. "A mistake? You thought you could manage both of us?" I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "You didn't think at all, James. You didn't think about me, about what I would feel when I found out about this. You didn't think about how much you've destroyed everything we had." Emily, still standing by the bed, seemed to shrink into herself, her eyes darting nervously between us. "I didn't know," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know about you, I swear. I didn't know he was with you." Her words barely registered in my mind. I couldn't care less about her. She was just a casualty in this mess, another person who had been fooled by James's charm just like I had. But it wasn't her I was angry at, it was him. I took a step toward him, my fists clenched at my sides, and every step I took felt like an accusation. "You lied to me, James. You've been lying to me this whole time." "And for what? For her? Was it worth it? Was she worth throwing away everything we had?" His face twisted in pain, and I could see the regret in his eyes, but it wasn't enough. Nothing he could say would undo the damage he'd done. "I never wanted to hurt you. I love you, Sarah. I really do. I don't know how things got out of hand." I scoffed, unable to believe his words. "Love me? You think this is love? You think betraying me for months is love?" My voice was rising now, filled with so much emotion that it was almost impossible to contain. "You've made a mockery of everything we built together." There was a long pause, and in that silence, I felt the weight of the truth settle heavily on my chest. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. This was a pattern. A series of lies, a web of deceit that he had carefully spun around me, and now that I had stumbled upon the truth, I realized just how deep it all went, how much of it had been fake. "I know I messed up," James said quietly, his voice full of shame. "But I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you." "Then why did you do it?" I demanded. "Why? If you loved me, why would you betray me like this? Why would you put me in a position where I had to find out this way?" His shoulders slumped, and for the first time he looked defeated, broken. "I don't have an answer, Sarah. I don't know why I did it. All I know is that I'm sorry, and I'll do anything to fix it. Please, just let me try." I shook my head, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. I didn't even try to wipe them away. What was the point? The man I had loved, the man I thought I would spend the rest of my life with, was standing in front of me, offering nothing but empty promises. I took a step back, putting distance between us. "No, James, I can't do this. I can't forgive you. I can't just forget what you did." The words stung as they left my mouth, but I knew they were the truth. "You've broken my trust. You've broken me." For a moment there was complete silence in the room. Even Emily seemed to hold her breath, unsure of what to do. And then James spoke again, his voice low, filled with regret. "I understand," he said, his voice shaky. "I don't deserve your forgiveness. But please, Sarah, I'm begging you. Don't walk away from me. Don't walk away from what we had." I turned away from him, walking slowly toward the door. "What we had?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "There is no we anymore, James. There never will be again." I reached for the door handle, but before I opened it, I turned to face him one last time. His eyes were wide with disbelief, his face pale and etched with pain. But I knew there was nothing left for us. The man I thought I knew had disappeared, replaced by a stranger who had shattered everything I held dear. "Goodbye, James," I said softly, and with those words, I stepped out of the room, leaving him and Emily behind, and walking into a future I never thought I would face alone. I didn't go straight home. I couldn't. The weight of what had just happened, the sharp sting of betrayal, was too much to bear all at once. I found myself driving aimlessly, the wheels of my car spinning over the pavement like they were trying to outrun the storm inside me. The city lights blurred into streaks, a haze of colors that reflected the chaos in my mind. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch something, to release the rage that had been building up inside me. But I couldn't bring myself to do anything but drive. Every thought, every memory of James, the times we had shared, the promises we'd made to each other, felt like a cruel joke. How had I been so blind? How had I not seen the signs? The pain was unbearable. The knowledge that James had lied to me for months, had held me in his arms while hiding another woman, was a wound that ran deeper than I could have imagined. I pulled into a quiet park by the side of the road and parked the car. The darkness outside felt like a blanket, suffocating me in its quiet stillness. I sat there for a long time, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. The silence pressed in on me, amplifying the ache in my chest. I wanted to blame him. I wanted to scream at him, to make him understand the pain he'd caused. But somewhere deep inside, I knew that I had to let go. I had to leave him behind. It was the only way forward. The man I thought I knew didn't exist anymore, and as hard as it was to accept, I couldn't continue living in the lie he had created. After a while, I couldn't stay still any longer. I needed to move, to take some action, to do anything that would make me feel like I wasn't just drifting aimlessly through this nightmare. I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen, scrolling through my contacts until I stopped at Lily's name. My sister. The one who had warned me. The one who had been the first to see the cracks in my relationship. I had pushed her away at first. I hadn't wanted to hear what she had to say, but now, I couldn't ignore her. I hit call and waited, each ring amplifying the uncertainty in my chest. When she finally picked up, her voice was soft, almost cautious. "Sarah?" I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "Lily, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to move on." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Lily's voice came through, steady but full of concern. "Sarah, you don't have to fix anything. You just need to heal. It's going to take time, but you'll get through this. I'm here for you, no matter what." Tears welled up in my eyes, and I closed them tightly to try and keep them at bay. "I don't know if I can forgive him, Lily. I don't know if I can ever trust anyone again. I feel so broken." Lily was silent for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was gentle but firm. "You don't have to forgive him right now, and you don't have to figure everything out at once. Just take it one day at a time. But you will heal, Sarah. You will find a way to move forward." I let out a shaky breath, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. I was exhausted, physically, emotionally, mentally. Everything felt heavy. But in Lily's words, I found a flicker of hope, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice breaking. "You're welcome. And Sarah, you don't need him to be whole. You're stronger than you think." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, it was comforting. I didn't need answers right now. I didn't need anything from James or anyone else. What I needed was time to figure out who I was without him, to find my own strength, to rebuild myself from the ground up. And it was going to take time. After hanging up with Lily, I sat there for a while longer, looking out at the park. The night was still, the stars barely visible behind the clouds. Everything felt distant, as if I were watching my life from a distance, unable to touch it. The weight of the past few hours hung over me, but somewhere inside, I knew I had to let go of James. The man I had loved was gone, and I needed to move on without him. I took a deep breath, the cool air filling my lungs. It wasn't going to be easy. There would be moments when the hurt would come rushing back, But I had to believe that there was something better ahead, that this wasn't the end, but rather the beginning of something new. The next day, I made the decision to pack up the rest of James's things from my apartment. It wasn't something I had planned to do so soon, but I knew I needed closure. I needed to reclaim my space, my life, without him in it. I started with the small things, the little trinkets and mementos that had filled our shared life, the photos, the letters, the gifts. Everything that had once symbolized our relationship now felt like a weight I couldn't carry anymore. With each item I packed away, I felt a little lighter, as though I was shedding a layer of the past. But it wasn't enough. I needed something more. And that's when I saw it, the thing that had held the most meaning for me. The bracelet James had given me on our first anniversary, a delicate silver chain with a small charm in the shape of a heart. I had worn it every day, a constant reminder of the love I had believed was unbreakable. But now, it was just another symbol of everything I had lost. I held it in my hand for a long time, staring at it as if trying to understand how something so small could represent so much pain. But then, with a deep breath, I placed it in the box with the rest of his things. I couldn't keep it. I couldn't keep any of it. Not anymore. The hardest part was over. I had let go of him. The first step toward healing was done. The days that followed felt like an emotional roller coaster, each one filled with its own highs and lows. One moment, I was determined to move forward, to heal, to reclaim my life. The next, I was overwhelmed by waves of grief and anger that I couldn't escape, no matter how hard I tried. I tried to keep busy, throwing myself into work, spending time with friends, and catching up with family. But no matter how much I tried to distract myself, the memory of James and what he had done lingered in the back of my mind. It was like a shadow I couldn't shake. I found myself replaying the moments from the hotel over and over in my head. His face, the look of surprise when he saw me standing there, the regret that had clouded his eyes as he spoke. But what hurt the most was his attempt to justify everything. I thought I could manage both of you. Those words echoed in my mind, and I couldn't escape them. But I couldn't stay in that place forever. I couldn't keep living in the past, wondering what could have been, what I could have done differently. I needed to confront the truth, not just about James, but about myself. I needed to face the reality that I had allowed myself to be part of a lie for so long, and I needed to forgive myself before I could move on. It wasn't easy, and there were days when the pain felt unbearable. But slowly, I began to find pieces of myself again, pieces that had been lost in the chaos of betrayal. I found solace in my friends, who were my constant support, and in my family, who had always been there for me. But there was one more thing I had to do. One final step that would bring everything to a close. I knew I had to see him again. It had been a week since the confrontation at the hotel, and I hadn't heard from James since. At first, I had been relieved. I didn't want to hear his excuses, his apologies, or his pleas for forgiveness. But as the days passed, I started to feel like there was something left unresolved, something I couldn't shake no matter how hard I tried. I needed closure. I needed to hear it from him, his true feelings, his final apology. I didn't want to carry the weight of this heartbreak any longer. So I called him. The phone rang twice before he answered, and his voice came through, strained but familiar. "Sarah. Hey." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. The words caught in my throat, and I had to take a deep breath before I could speak. "James," I said, my voice quiet, steady. "I need to meet you. I need to talk." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear him shift in his seat. "Yeah, of course. I'll meet you wherever you want." I didn't know exactly what I was hoping for in that moment. I didn't know if I was expecting some grand apology, some heartfelt explanation that would make everything better. I didn't know if I even cared anymore. But I had to see him one last time, to understand, to process, to make sense of everything that had happened. We agreed to meet at a small cafe in the city, one that I used to visit with friends when things felt easier. A neutral place where we could talk without the distractions of the past. I didn't want to go to his place, or mine. I wanted to meet somewhere that held no memories of us, somewhere that wouldn't remind me of the life we had built together. When I arrived, I found a table in the corner, away from the few other patrons. I sat with my back to the door, my hands resting on the table in front of me, trying to steady my nerves. I hadn't seen him since that day at the hotel, and a part of me was still unsure about what I was going to say. What could I say to him? What could he say to me that would make any of this okay? I didn't have to wait long. James walked in, his eyes immediately scanning the room before they landed on me. For a brief moment, our eyes met, and I saw the familiar look of hesitation in his gaze, the same look he had worn the day he tried to explain himself. But there was something different now. His shoulders were slumped, his expression heavy with the weight of the past week. He walked over slowly, pulling out the chair across from me. When he sat down, there was a long silence between us. Neither of us spoke right away. I could see the pain in his eyes, but it didn't move me like it once had. I had already moved past that. I had already made peace with what had happened, and I wasn't sure if I could ever go back. Finally, James spoke, his voice low and filled with regret. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know how sorry I am. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I could juggle everything, but I was wrong. I was selfish, and I let you down. I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at him, my heart heavy but steady. Part of me wanted to yell at him, to make him feel the pain he had caused. But that wasn't what I needed. Not anymore. I don't need your apology, James, I finally said, my voice calm but firm. It doesn't change anything. What you did, you can't take that back, and you can't expect me to forget it." His face fell, and he looked down at the table, his fingers tapping nervously against the surface. I know I can't fix this, but I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." I nodded slowly, feeling a quiet resolution settling in my chest. "I believe you. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm done. I'm done trying to fix something that was never right in the first place." There was a long pause, and for the first time since we started talking, I felt like I could breathe again. It was over. I had let go. I had moved on, and I wasn't going back. James sat there, silent, his face filled with a mixture of regret and acceptance. He knew, just as I did, that there was nothing more to say. We had reached the end of our story, and in that moment, I realized that it wasn't just the end of our relationship, it was the beginning of something new. A future where I was in control, a future where I could finally heal. After that meeting with James, I walked out of the cafe feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The weight of the past few months, the pain of betrayal, had been lifted. I had finally faced the truth, confronted him, and heard the apology I needed, though it wasn't the kind of apology that would heal everything. It was a beginning, not an end. I had expected that meeting to feel like a final chapter, something that would bring the closure I so desperately sought. But instead, it felt like the opening of a new door. I had expected tears. I had expected to be angry, but all I felt was a quiet sense of peace. And with that peace came the realization I had been holding on to the past for far too long. I had to start moving forward. I didn't know exactly how to move on. I didn't know when I would stop feeling the sting of everything that had happened, but I knew that I was stronger now. And maybe that was all I needed to know. The truth was that healing wasn't a destination, it was a journey, a road I had to take step by step. I spent the next few days in a blur of activity. I didn't stay in one place for too long. I started running every morning, letting the fresh air fill my lungs and the rhythm of my feet pounding against the pavement clear my mind. I began taking up old hobbies I had neglected, reading books I had always wanted to finish, painting again, going out with friends and laughing, something I hadn't done in months. For the first time in a long time, I began to reconnect with myself. I spent time with Lily, who had become my rock throughout all of this. She was always there, always listening when I needed to talk, offering her support without hesitation. It wasn't just about the breakup, it was about me finding my way back to the woman I used to be, before I was consumed by the lies and the hurt. Lily understood that, and for the first time in a long time I felt like I could be myself again. But healing wasn't just about the physical act of distracting myself. It was about confronting the parts of myself that had been damaged, the parts I had ignored because I didn't want to deal with the pain. The lies I told myself, the way I convinced myself that James was perfect, that I didn't deserve more than he was willing to give. I had allowed myself to believe that I wasn't worthy of true love, of respect, and of trust. But now, I knew that wasn't true. I spent a lot of time reflecting, journaling my thoughts and feelings, pouring out the raw emotions that still lingered inside. Writing allowed me to see my pain from a distance, and as the days passed, I noticed something incredible happening. I was starting to understand the depth of my strength. The person who walked out of that cafe that day was no longer the same woman who had walked in. One afternoon, a few weeks after meeting with James, I was sitting in the park, watching the sun set, when I received a message. It was from him. I hesitated before opening it, but I knew I had to. The message was simple, but it sent a jolt through me nonetheless. I just wanted to say, again, I'm sorry. I'll always care about you. I hope you find happiness, Sarah. You deserve it. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment, unsure what to say. I could feel the old pain trying to rise up, but I squashed it down. I took a deep breath, and then I typed, "Thank you, James. I hope you find what you're looking for, too." And just like that, I hit send. It was a small act, but it was another step in my healing process. It was me letting go, really letting go this time. As the days passed, I began to focus more on myself. I started new projects, things I had put off for years. I joined a yoga class, and I even signed up for a cooking course that I had always wanted to try. Slowly but surely, I was becoming a new version of myself, stronger, more self-aware, and ready for whatever life had in store. I was no longer bound by the memories of a relationship that had once defined me. I was no longer waiting for someone to complete me. I was learning how to be complete on my own. One evening, as I sat on my balcony, sipping a glass of wine and watching the stars, I finally felt the peace I had been searching for. I thought about everything I had gone through, the hurt, the betrayal, the heartbreak. But I also thought about the lessons I had learned, the strength I had discovered within myself, and the people who had been there for me when I needed them most. I had survived it all. And now I was thriving. I didn't know what the future held. Maybe love would come again. Maybe it wouldn't. But what I did know was that I was no longer afraid. I was no longer looking for someone to fill the void left by James. I was learning how to fill it myself. I was finally free. The road to healing had been long and difficult, but I had walked it. I had found my strength, my independence, and my peace. And that, I realized, was worth more than any relationship could ever give me. I smiled to myself as the night air settled around me, the warmth of the wine in my hands reminding me that I was exactly where I needed to be. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole again.